Hi, Pop. Today is a really special day. You know, I was thinking, I don't know if your mom and dad could have ever imagined the success you've had in your life. I don't think your mom lived long enough into her 70s to get to see how successful you became. I knew she knew you as a reporter, but I don't think she really could have imagined what came of you after your job at Jefferson, where you began in PR. And she passed around that time. And as much as she admired the Hollywood celebrities, it's probably safe to say that it might have been better that she didn't live to see you become buddies with the Pope and Mother Teresa. I don't think she was ready for that. Do you? It was probably hard enough on her that you got caught talking to a girl while on the synagogue payroll. And then your family was blacklisted for a while at least. Ugh. But what teenage boy wouldn't be flirting at that age? And honestly, who cares? That wasn't a great congregation anyway, probably. Most people there were sour from their own misery. They wouldn't have had time to notice anyway. Okay, maybe it wasn't a good judgment on your part. They were too filled with judgment and needed a diversion from their own misery, so they had their noses in everyone else's business, except for a few of them who were good people. But none of them would imagine your father would become a well-known cantor in his old age. They'd be fighting to the front of the line to get in on the synagogue bulletin to claim that they knew Billy Eisen back when. And that's just how some people are. They ignore you and criticize you, but when you become successful in their eyes, they suddenly want to claim you as theirs. I wish your mom had an easier life and that her mother hadn't died before your mother had a chance to grow up, a caregiver of her younger sisters. A misfortune your mom probably never got over. But I don't really know because I never really knew her. I've only heard that she wasn't a very happy person. But that wasn't entirely her fault either. As we know, women really had it hard, and they still do, in that era back then and now, but probably worse then. Men were always right. And as the eldest daughter, there was a lot of expectation put on her at an early age, and she probably never really got to heal from that horrible loss and manifest her own dreams. But I would not say the same about you. In spite of being raised in abject poverty, you went right for the things you wanted. And just as most parents hope for, whether they recognize it or not, you became very successful in your own right. And in spite of many great challenges you faced and overcame in life, you became yourself and you were a success. If they could see you now. But what is success? I mean, look, your dad only knew poverty, but luckily had the wealth of a happy spirit to win over many hearts at his ripe old age. Oh, we all know he could show his wrath from time to time, pulling off the proverbial tablecloth from the dining room table, breaking all the dishes of possibility in the wake of his fit of anger, leaving the house in a cloud of broken china and walking out the door, not to come back until his nuclear reactor had cooled. But because of his universally good nature, we always forgave him when he returned a new man, overcoming his fits of passion. He came back to his jovial self, winning the hearts of most. Back to buffing floors, meeting everyone that passed him, including some cute nurses in tight white uniforms. But that's another story. Even your pop was proud of you to some degree. But you know, he would have never imagined some of the things that you accomplished after his passing. One simple accomplishment was your careful attention to always putting a penny away and investing that penny. With great foresight, you created a pretty large nest egg, fit for a jolly green giant, and for you and my mom to have a very comfortable existence with all of your needs taken care of in your 70s and 80s, and now, as of today, your 90s. Take a breath and let that in. You saved a nest egg that would have fed a giant. If they could have only seen you now at 90. You have children living here and there and far and wide, even in the promised land. Imagine that. They'd most certainly be proud of your first grandson and second grandsons now living as Orthodox Jews in Israel. They would have not forgotten the tradition that their parents and your parents and the parents before them and their parents carried on for thousands of years. In your parents' eyes, that would be a success they would have never imagined possible. You can thank your daughter and son-in-law for that. But what they might also not imagine is that you have had many, many friends in your lifetime. Good and loyal friends. Even friends who wrote for the New York Times. Friends who were doctors and lawyers and therapists. Who knows? Maybe your parents sent you all of those therapists so you could better understand where you came from and why you are the way you are. To embrace your goodness and heal the parts they never could. Imagine if either of your parents had even one friend who was a psychologist. Do you think they would have seized the opportunity for self-reflection? Who knows? But beyond that, they may not have imagined the company you kept, friends who were religious leaders, and is the wish of most Jewish parents that their children live long and healthy and successful lives. You achieved all of that and more with flying colors. Let me break this down for you. Perhaps all of those years of squash and tennis paid off. Or maybe it was all the prayer you did every day. You never stopped wrestling with the Creator to find answers to the mystery of life. And here you are in your 9th decade, still hanging on. Let me ask you this. Have you figured out the Holy Grail, the mystery of life, and why we are here? One thing is for sure. After a lot of tough years of toil every day, you are bringing a lot of joy to my mommy, and she in turn brings you so much joy. And I ask you, what could be better? If they could only see you now. Not even your sweet old parents had the kind of love that you and Mary and Joan share. And what could be better? To be in love with the love of your life for 67 years and counting? Now that's an achievement. In this day and age, where there are more divorces than there are long-lasting marriages, that's truly a miracle. and I hope you're proud of that success. We know it was a bumpy ride, but true love remains. And look at you two now, all cuddled up and nestled on your own little love nest atop of a huge tree. You can see out your balcony. I didn't get the sense from what you and Mom have told me that your mother ever thought it would last. And boy, was she wrong. And I know you've always questioned your success, following in your mother's footsteps of self-doubt and moping about, pondering your shoulda, woulda, coulda, haves, and misinterpreting it as a lack of success. But I've always known there was a blind spot in your reasoning around success. So I'm here today to set the record straight. I ask you plain and simple, in the court of balanced opinion between father and son, would you not call living with the love of your life for 67 years and ending up with 5 grandchildren and 5 or 6 great grandchildren and great resounding success? Isn't that success? I'd call that a success. And if you were to count all of the lessons that you passed on to your children, either through your great wisdom or your unintentional mistakes that were in turn learned from you, you raised 4 incredibly loving, successful children, all with great talents and gifts. They each have given to their families and students and communities, in turn raising the honor of your name each day of their lives. Is that not a resounding success you can take at least some credit for? So, Pop, please, let's agree right now. You'll never again think that you're not a success, because it would mean that neither are we. And that can't possibly be true. And it's not true, and it never will be. The frown I sometimes see written on your face, I would have, I could have, I should have, I'm not, I never, I couldn't have because I'm not deserving, because my mother didn't believe in me, and so I'm not going to prove her right. I am going to prove her right. It's not a frown that needs to stay. The frown that doubts your own success and lovability is simply not true. And in the great court of opinion, we hereby deem you a success. The question is, will you let it in? Will you let that in? If they could only see you now, father of 4 successful children, your success is also as a grandfather. I mean, look at them. Besides being good looking, you must say that for their age, each one of them has followed in the footsteps of great integrity and carry on a tradition of being loving and good people. Today, that's a lot. If your parents really got to know your adult children and their successes and that of their children, your grandchildren, at least your mother would have probably regretted having ever doubted your potential. And it's a pity, because the loss was hers. Who knows? Maybe that was her strategy, to pretend she didn't believe in your ability to make her proud, when really what she was enacting unconsciously was reverse psychology? That maybe if she doubted you, you would become a success? But probably because of her own misery, nothing would have made her happy. And some people, that's all they get. Staying trapped in what they believe they can't change, because they don't believe they can change or break a pattern, that they deserve any more than the bad luck they've run into. And we all know that is not how human nature works. We are all creatures of habit. And if we shift those habits of thought, we actually change. Otherwise, how would you have picked yourself up after any of your losses and have started over and over and over, consistently and constantly reinventing yourself? It's because you never lost faith. You summoned your resourcefulness and fed 6 hungry bellies for over a quarter of a century. I hope you can see that now, even for a split second, that you see you've done well in your 9 decades on this planet, not even to begin to mention all of your own professional accomplishments, from dozens of articles written and a published memoir and years as a publicist to raise the voices of some of the most talented and successful people in their fields. I mean, think about it. You don't need much positive encouragement or sane reasoning to realize that you alone not only met, but interviewed and wrote about and promoted some of the greatest names of our time, from Dr. Martin Luther King to the great billionaire Pippin Shaw, or Bippin Shaw. I think I called him Pippin Shaw. To the leaders of many successful hospitals and banks and pharmaceutical companies. You got each of them either on the cover of Time and Newsweek and articles in the New York Times and the Philadelphia Inquirer and the Bulletin. You made the world believe in their success. And now it's time at 90 to realize it was you all the while that was the success behind the curtain. Do you get what I'm saying? Sure, you may have some regrets. Who knows? You probably even wrote about Trump at your short stint at the Atlantic City Gazette when he bankrupted his hotel and ran off with a payroll of his employees that he never compensated, which by now you're probably using your last bottle of whiteout to clear that article off your resume. Good job, Dad. If they could only see you now, living in Rydell, Pennsylvania, with your huge fancy mansion on every block surrounding you, they would have never imagined the little curly red-headed kid from Brooklyn eventually becoming a massive success. If only you could see what we see, that for all of your ups and downs, good times and bad, you came through. Even after a mafia holdup, being tied to a chair, mouth sealed with duct tape, you managed to escape like Houdini, and you're still standing on your 2 feet and with an amazing past behind you to brag about. If they could only see you now with your beautiful and glamorous wife, even at 85, always dressed to the nines, and dressing you at least to the sevens or eights, with a lint-free blue shirt and a handsome red tie, smart pinstripe shirt, and beautifully polished leather shoes, glistening like the great royals of Galicia and Latvia and Russia and the Ukraine. Chin up and proud of your accomplishments and that of your children and grandchildren. Now you know, at 90, no one is perfect. No one follows the same map. And we never know how and when our progeny will meet success. But they will if they try. And they are all trying their best. So trust that they will go on and make you proud. You must be proud of that auspicious night in 1958, or was it 59, at Broad and Pine, at the YMCA dance. You laid eyes on our mother. Was that not a great success? Was that not like marrying into royalty? I imagine you must have been proud of that accomplishment. You found a beautiful redheaded bride who would take care of you into your ninth decade. Lucky is an understatement. In the middle of all of this, the phone rings. Marion, can you get it? It's probably one of the Russians calling about services on Friday. It wasn't a call. It was someone at the door downstairs in the lobby at Rydal West. Mom picks up and says, "Hello?" A Russian-sounding voice with a very thick accent of a man. "We're looking for Eddie Eisen." And without asking who, Mom says, "Come on up on the elevator to 4, and I'll come down the hall and meet you." She imagines it's one of the older couples at her congregation who love our dad as if he were their own son. Marion thinks, "Oh, it must be so." And so with those fancy chocolates, yeah, so-and-so will bring them up here and we'll just eat the whole box. We don't need them in the house, but they're only going to make me fat. Oy, I wish that I wasn't always, chocolate, no. Why do they always do that for birthdays? I'll just share them with the neighbors on our floor, no problem. I will not eat them, she says out loud. Adela, I'm not going to eat any of your birthday chocolate. I'm going to need your help, so I hope you're hungry, Adela. He says, What, Mare? Are you talking to me? What? And just then, Mom pops out of the door, seeing which elder Russian couple it is. But without her glasses, she can't see quite down the hall. One has a walker and the other with a cane. Oh, it must be little Rita. Wait, it's not. Maybe it's... Gosh, I am getting forgetful. I don't even remember who those people are. All crouched over, shuffling slowly down the hall. Mommy blurts out, Take your time. We're in no rush. We have all day. They say nothing, focusing intently on the walk down the long corridor, to them, which seems endless. Mommy goes back in to fix some refreshments that they might want and leaves the door ajar. And I want to make a point here. Did you, Dad, ever imagine that Mom would have made you, and I've calculated, 74,365 meals in all of your years of marriage? Beautiful meals. Meals that James Beard, the gastronomical genius, would have given her a huge prize for. You're lucky. You're really lucky. Anyway, after a few long minutes, the doorbell rings. My beautiful mother opens the door expecting to see a Russian couple, but instead, it's your parents. They've come for your birthday. Yes, it's Lillian and Billy Eisen. Not exactly the old Russian couple you imagine, but good Eastern European stock nonetheless. Mom calls out to you in the office, Eddie, come here. Come quick, Adela. You're not going to believe who's here. You come down the hall with your walker, look up expecting to see little Rita and her entourage, but it's not. All four of you are shocked, just staring at each other for like a solid 2 minutes. What are they doing here? Have they time traveled? Are you hallucinating? They've come for a reason. You'll soon find out. If they could only see you now, turns into, oh gosh, they're here. They're back. They enter in. They frown a little when you and Mom ask them to take off their shoes. White carpets? They both exclaim and look at each other, exasperated and proud all at once. They shuffle in, having rarely been in a place with white carpet, let alone walking in barefoot. And time freezes. They look around in amazement, absolutely entranced. Their mouths both agape. Your father, with a tear running down his eye, seeing and looking up, and your built-in bookshelves towering above his 4-foot figure. His eyes widen as they follow the beveled and stained white wood, lined wall to wall on both sides of this palatial setting in a sitting room with books and Jewish literature and pictures of bearded rabbis and a Russian samovar? Huh? And a wind-up rabbi doll? They look puzzled at and look at each other and then quickly look away as if they didn't notice it or if they were too afraid to ask. Mom holds up her hands, lifting up her shoulders as if questioning, but also showing that she has so many great and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, that prideful look on her face. She points to dozens of pictures of all of your children and grandchildren lining the counters all the way around the comfortable sitting room with gorgeous tropical plants they never even imagined existed on the planet, furiously blooming in a prism of color across from the divan and in front of a huge glass doors leading out to a deck lined with more and more plants and outdoor furniture. Boy, did you two make out well, they think to themselves. And mirrored walls? Lillian looks at Billy, puzzled. Again, pointing to the mirrored walls. You all turn and see yourselves, all four of you in shock, staring in the mirror, once again together. Billy says, imagine, mirrored walls. It's like the palace of, and Mommy chimes in, I know. It's like the mirrored palace of Versailles in France. They try to imagine even one mirrored wall in their poor little apartment in Southwest Philadelphia. Impossible. No one had anything like that back in the 50s or 60s, except rich people. You two must be rich. But where did you get the money from? Your mother says. Surely Eddie didn't earn a penny. She still can't imagine where you possibly would have gotten built-in bookshelves, painted white with the finest wood, and detail crafted by an expert cabinet maker, not some IKEA junk. She's puzzled trying to suss all that out. And Mom would walk your father over in his walker, and they'd take your seats. The two turquoise swivel couches. Your mother on the far side, her face still looking a little stiff, her lips pursed in disbelief. It would be hard for her to let all that in. The wealth, the success. You see her face change from curiosity to disbelief. And then something comes over her. She refuses to believe what she sees. There's no way a son of hers could have made good for himself and his family. That wasn't a plan. How could he end up a success? And just as you imagine, dubious that anyone who came after her could have anything better than that she did, she'd have to find something to criticize. She'd look over at the shelves and she'd ask you in Yiddish, Adel, what the heck is that boxing glove doing on the shelf? What are you, taking up boxing at 90 years old? Pick, pick, pick. She'd find something askew. She turned your Joe Frazier success into a mockery. But this time, something different transpires. Mommy ignores her comment and grabs a little plate of Vorspeise that she's prepared and places it on the coffee table. And the two of you sit on that big fluffy couch with embroidered pillows and beautiful tchotchkes. Your dad whispers in Mommy's ear and says, "You have any schnapps?" Your mom would blurt out, "It looks, what is that thing over there? You know, it took us all day to get over here from our place. We had to take 3 dirty old buses to get over here to this fancy neighborhood," she'd fetch. And Mom would make her a little plate with her beautiful little salads and spinach dip and crudité, and your father'd be chewing and chewing and chewing and making sounds of delight, dropping cracker crumbs all over his sweater, and your mother would refuse to eat anything, much save a little nibble on a kosher carrot. She wasn't watching her figure. She'd need to use her telephone. "Marion, can you pass me the phone? I need to call Mrs. Cyrus to see if this kind of rich people's food was kosher." Imagine you not eating something that your beautiful wife prepared. Imagine all of the pleasures you've had for 67 years, having breakfast, lunch, and dinner prepared for you. As I said, that's approximately 73,365 spectacular meals, a gastronomical fantasy that would win the James Beard Gourmet Restaurant Contest 73,000 times over. Is that not success? If they could only see you now, they'd imagine you with a huge belly, which I've heard you don't have anymore because you're not eating enough. But that's for later. But then the time comes when you grab your walker and you walk your mom back into the office and have her sit down on the simple green chair by your desk. And once she's settled in, you reach up behind her to the shelf above her, lined with all of your binders of articles and accomplishments, and you place a copy of your book in your mother's lap. And she looks down, squinting with curiosity and disbelief. And she reaches into her purse and puts on her spectacles and reads slowly with a strong Latvian accent. "Front row Seat by Edward N. Eisen. Front row seat. She gets the metaphor, and her eyes light up because she loved moving pictures. She kept a scrapbook of famous people. And then it all finally hits her. And now the rain you've been waiting for 9 decades. The tears of pride start to slowly roll down her cheeks. The pride of your mother at last. Her pride fills the room. It's so big. You push back in your swivel seat, not sure how to react. But what mother in their right mind would not start crying when they saw the memoir of their first and only son, a memoir about your adventures and the people you met and the success you had in your career, plus a few crazy stories about you and your nutty cousin Joni for good measure. Lillian pages through the book, almost holding her breath for a solid 10 minutes, and then finally puts the book down on her lap. You look at her, and she looks at you. Now, with a river of tears streaming down her face, you reach over to the tissues on your desk with Catholic nuns on them, and not thinking what you were doing, you pass them to her. And she, caught up in the emotion of the moment, not even noticing, she'd wipe her tears and blow her nose, and she'd look at you and look down at the book, and suddenly she stands up tall like you've never seen, and she takes you into her arms, and she asks you for your signature and your forgiveness for being so wrong about you, for misreading your character, for not believing in you because she couldn't bear to believe in herself. Having lost her own mother in childbirth, that was the greatest loss of her life. And you could say that she never recovered from it. And she saw it, things only got worse. Nothing ever felt quite right after that loss. But in this moment, in this embrace, she grabs your hand just like your father used to do to mommy for years. She kisses your hands one by one. And now you start crying. And she hands you the pack of tissues with the nuns printed on the cover. And you pull out a holy tissue and wipe your tears and blow your nose. And no words are spoken because pride is in the heart. And the pride in her eyes transforms into your pride in your heart. And you realize that you've done well. And you finally let that in. And you say it aloud. Yes, Ma, I've done well. And she says, you've done well. And the two release the embrace and walk towards the door of your office, both shuffling back down the hall to the living room where Mommy and your pop are sitting merrily with a bottle of schnapps between them and 2 teacups. They're giggling, and Mom is laughing, as she's prone to, hysterically. And at that moment, you wonder why. We all know she's not a drinker. Did he really get her to have a little tossa of schnapps? Well, by the looks of her, cheeks all bright red, that naughty look When she's had something she shouldn't have, mom's now giggling nonstop. And she and your father are laughing hysterically, also sharing a box of tissues, finishing up. Yes, indeed, a last sip of what your mother might only see as tea, but we all know teacups of schnapps, at which time you and your mother sit back down in the turquoise chairs, and at least three of you start laughing at the craziness of this all. Your mother reaches in her purse, grabs a hanky, and giggles into a napkin, holding her smile. Mommy invites you all over to the dining room table. You all have a seat, and Mom serves stuffed brockus, which fills the room with warm Eastern European warmth, enough to melt all of Siberia for 5 minutes straight. All we hear is moans of pleasure as the four of you devour the delicacies you've been served. No one says a word, but your father and my mom glance over at each other and start laughing again hysterically, and then stop, and it's quiet again. And just then, you look around the table at one another, and you're feeling so satisfied, so blessed, so grateful for this strange but wonderful miracle of life, where we are born into a foreign country, and sometimes we leave and sometimes we stay, but we often never forget where we came from. For some, to their detriment, and for others, to their benefit. It's all the way that we decide to hold the opposites, the conflicts that we're presented with in life. We sometimes imagine that we can't be that same person that blows up in anger and holds the hand of a dying child. But that is the gift of life. That is what God gives us, the great paradox of being alive here and now. And in every verse in the Bible, he encourages us with story and verse that is indeed possible to hold the paradox of good and evil, happy and sad, pleasure and pain, young and old, sickness and health, eating flavorless porridge or mommy's spectacular cooking. What do we do with that paradox? Is what makes us a success or not. I'll say that again. What we do with that paradox is what makes us a success or not. We're given the chance often over and over, but the rest is up to us and you, my dear Pop, to see the cup finally half full rather than half empty. The parable, for at least the past 70 years, you married, in a way, the cheery person that sees it half full so you could grow into appreciating the wealth around you. And I can now tell you on your 90th birthday, you have done well. Your cup runneth over. I know you think I'm smart and I know how to write, thanks to you. I hope you also believe me that you have done well. We hold up a toast to you today with a full cup. We will, from here out, see it full, even if there's only a drop. God has given you the will to see it as full, and you do. And you start to live as if They could see you now. Pride at your success and the love that you've surrounded yourself with, and a loving family to celebrate with. Pop, have a wonderful birthday, and we will be celebrating you for the rest of the year and for the rest of your life. And you will be remembered by your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren and your great-great-grandchildren as somebody who exceeded the expectations of his parents' wildest dreams. And at one point, when you wake up in the morning, before you start thinking, that you'll surprise even yourself and walk through each day believing in your great success in life, maybe for the first time. But that much is up to you. With love and respect and care, let's not forget good humor and a cheery disposition, like the wife you married, the sunshine of your life, who you treasure and finally have accepted as one of the greatest gifts that you chose to give yourself, along with the acknowledgement of your own wisdom to see your own success. I love you, Pop. Happy 90th birthday.